People expect rapid solutions, but interacting with the state, they often hit rigid processes, layered rules, and fragmented systems moving at a crawl. Yet, if you look at the legislation and the strategic blueprints, OECD governments score higher on digital maturity today than at any point in history. We can measure this through the OECD Digital Government Policy Framework, which sets the standard for assessing public sector digital capabilities across 6 core dimensions. In the 2025 index, the aggregate maturity score jumped 14%, climbing from 0.61 to 0.70. But high scores in policy design do not guarantee execution. The seamless, proactive, cross-agency services promised by these frameworks remain largely out of reach for the public. To see where the breakdown occurs, we have to split the policy cycle in 2, strategy and design on one side, and implementation and monitoring on the other. Mapping OECD performance, strategic approaches soar to 0.87, while operational monitoring flatlines at 0.45. In the data-driven sector, the intent to govern data sits at 0.80, but tracking actual results drops to 0.45. Governments are highly proficient at writing mandates and drafting blueprints. They lack the operational routines and integrated systems to execute them in reality. This divergence is the delivery gap, the point where the state's digital ambition exceeds its capacity to track, refine, and deliver results. The delivery gap is most visible in how governments build digital public infrastructure. Rolling out a shared platform does not mean it actually gets used. Take open data. Across the OECD, 94% of countries now legally require their institutions to publish public sector data, but availability doesn't equal utility. For machine-to-machine connectivity required to use that information, only 49% of high-value datasets offer API access. Without application programming interfaces, information cannot flow between departments or out to the public. These portals become dead-end digital silos. Because the data is disconnected, its utility cannot be tracked. Only 11% of countries evaluate the social impact of the open data they release. This structural isolation kills the once-only principle, forcing citizens to manually submit the exact same information to multiple agencies over and over. Without mandated API access and cross-agency integration, a government portal is just passive infrastructure. The structures funding these projects are equally rigid. How a state buys technology dictates the architecture it ends up with. While 89% of OECD countries have mechanisms to plan and estimate upfront spending on digital initiatives, those budgets are typically locked into static, multi-year cycles. Only 55% of countries utilize agile, iterative procurement models that allow them to adjust course as development progresses. When large upfront program budgets are tied to fixed specifications, governments cannot adapt to new software capabilities or halt failing projects. Accountability vanishes after the initial check is written. Just 25% of governments conduct ex-post cost-benefit analyses on their completed digital projects. Escaping this requires staged funding models. Australia's Investment Oversight Framework releases money in modular tranches tied strictly to demonstrated progress. Iterative technology simply cannot survive inside compliance-heavy, unevaluated budget cycles. But even flexible budgets require human capital to direct them. Advanced technical infrastructure requires internal civil servants who understand how it works. Governments recognize the deficit. 72% of countries have conducted assessments of their internal digital skills, yet they do not structurally plan to fix the gap. Across the OECD, only 17% of countries have a dedicated public sector digital skills strategy. Without long-term workforce planning, departments remain entirely reliant on external vendors. They surrender strategic control over their own digital architecture. When an agency lacks internal technical expertise, it cannot critically evaluate vendor proposals, negotiate complex contracts, or pivot safely when a third-party solution fails. Systemic dependency and technical lock-in are the direct results of failing to build a multidisciplinary digital civil service. The delivery gap is about to face its most severe stress test yet, the rapid integration of artificial intelligence into public administration. In almost every OECD nation, AI has arrived. 97% of countries are now using artificial intelligence in at least one area of government. The nature of this technology is shifting toward agentic AI, systems that do not just generate text, but autonomously executing complex sequences of actions across multiple agency workflows on top of unmonitored, fragmented foundations introduces acute operational risk. The governance deficit is extreme. Despite near-universal adoption, only 28% of countries actively measure the impact of their AI use cases. Operating without algorithmic transparency means the public cannot see how decisions are made, eroding trust. Furthermore, agentic AI cannot function reliably without the strict interoperability and API access that more than half of current government datasets still lack. Deploying advanced AI models without secure data foundations and continuous performance monitoring scales systemic flaws rather than efficiency. Governments already possess the necessary strategies, index frameworks, and policy blueprints. The mandate for public sector leaders is now a total pivot from policy design to operational discipline. First, departments must be legally mandated to reuse existing shared infrastructure, forcing strict cross-agency interoperability. Second, financial oversight must permanently transition away from monolithic IT spending in favor of agile, staged funding loops. Embedding these routines into daily governance is the only method to construct digital architecture capable of adapting to sudden socioeconomic shocks. The gap between a high-scoring policy on paper and a citizen's frustrating reality is structural, not accidental. For digital maturity to mean something tangible, the rigor applied to implementation and monitoring must finally match the weight given to strategic design. A government can only act as a unified platform when its data flows legally and automatically between institutional silos. Ultimately, the state must fundamentally re-engineer itself to move beyond the strategic blueprint and into operational utility.